Good evening, this is Dr. Alan Yim. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to analyze four-part writing, just looking to see if there are parallels in the part writing. So here you see three chords written in a kind of a piano score for voices. So this is what we would call four-part writing: soprano, alto in the treble clef, and tenor and bass in the bass clef. The stems indicate what voice you're looking at. So for the sopranos, the stems are up, altos stem down, tenors stem up, and bass stem down. Now, when we look at these voices, we have to look at every possible pair of voices. So how many are possible with these four? Well, soprano and alto, soprano and tenor, soprano and bass, alto and tenor, alto and bass, and alto and tenor. These are the possibilities of pairs of voices. And what we're looking for is the type of motion between each of the voices. So let's take an example. The soprano and the alto. If you look at the first two chords, actually these are moving in parallel. And how can I tell? Well, the soprano is stepping down and the alto is stepping down. So they're moving by the same interval. For now, don't worry about whether it's a half step or a whole step, or if it's a minor third and a major third. If it's the same number, we're going to classify it according to the number. So they're both moving a step. The soprano and the tenor. Well, take a look at the tenor now. The tenor is, I'm going to highlight the tenor in green, because notice, this is what we call a common tone. The tenor doesn't move. If there's a common tone, you know that can't be a parallel with another voice. So this is something that means you could just pretty much eliminate that voice as a potential problem. So I'll put the type of motion. Anything that's moving with the tenor is going to be oblique or static. All of the other voices are moving, so any voice that is with the tenor is going to be oblique. So I'm going to label oblique in green. Okay, so O for oblique. All of the voices, oh, whoops, I made a little mistake here at the bottom. This is supposed to be the bass and the tenor. Okay. And this is also oblique. Okay. How about the soprano and the bass? Well, you can see the bass is leaping down a fourth and the soprano is stepping. They're going in the same direction, so there's same direction by different amounts. This is similar motion. And finally, the alto and the bass, it's the same situation. They're both going in the same direction by different amounts. Now, I suppose if you wanted to check right now, you could check this, and this to make sure that you don't have one of those types of parallels that we're not supposed to have. Okay, so let's do that. Well, the first thing we want to look at is the interval between the soprano and the alto, because they're moving in parallel. That interval is a sixth. Parallel sixths aren't a problem. So it sounds like this. We can hear those voices independently. What we want to avoid is a parallel fifth, like this. That would be bad. Or a parallel octave. Again, the reason for avoiding these is you want the voices to sound independent. You want to be able to hear the voices as individual parts. It helps the music to sound full, and it also helps the music to be in four parts, not three parts. So if you have this unison, that's going to be three parts. And the more parallel fifths and octaves you have, then the fewer parts you're actually writing in. And we want to write in four parts. So this one here is okay, it's parallel six. What about similar motion? Well, similar motion can only be a problem if it's between the bass and the soprano, because we could have a hidden octave or a hidden fifth. So this alto and bass, that's okay. And now the other one, the soprano and bass here, this one we must check because we don't know if it's going to be hit in an octave or not. The conditions are it has to be the soprano and the bass, the soprano has to leap, and it has to end in an octave or a fifth. Okay, let's take a look at the situation. Well, the soprano is stepping, so right away you know it's not going to be hidden. But let's just check the interval anyway. This interval, it's a G to a B, so that's a third. So this is not a problem. This one's okay. And we don't have any problems between the first two chords. Alright, we're going to now look at the relationship of the second chord moving to the third chord. And we're going to look again at all the possible pairs. So, first thing I will look for is a common tone. This time, there are no common tones. Every voice is moving. So we're going to have to check each one of these pairs, and just to make it clear, I'll label them again. Soprano alto, soprano tenor, soprano bass. Alto tenor, alto bass, bass and tenor. Okay, so let's take a look at them. We'll start at the top. The soprano is leaping down, the alto is stepping up. They're going in opposite directions. So this is contrary motion, opposite direction. The soprano and the tenor, again, maybe I should highlight this just so you can see where I'm talking. So here it is, the soprano and the tenor. They're going in opposite directions also. Okay. The next one is the soprano and the bass. Well, you notice all of the bottom three voices are going up. Only the soprano is going down. So the soprano is moving in contrary motion to all three lower voices. So those are all contrary. Contrary motion is really useful. It's a very it's easy to hear. So when you have voices moving in opposite directions, you can really hear the voices as opposed to moving in the same direction. This is parallel fifths. So, okay, alto and tenor. Here, they're moving in the same direction, and we have to check to see if they're parallel or if they're similar. Well, the alto is stepping up, the tenor is leaping. So I hope you can see that because they're moving different amounts, this is similar motion. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at the alto and the bass. Again, the alto is stepping, the bass is leaping. So this is also similar. And finally, we have to look at the bass and the tenor. Here, the tenor is leaping up a fourth, and the bass is leaping up a fourth. So this is parallel. Whoops. This is the one that we really have to be most careful with, this parallel. Alright, the contrary motion. Every one of these types we have to check. So contrary motion, similar motion, and parallel motion, we have to check to see whether we have a situation of a bad parallel. Let's start with the similar because that's the easiest one. The only kind of bad parallel you can have with similar motion is the hidden octaves or hidden fifths. And again, the conditions are it has to be the bass and the soprano has to leap, and it has to end on an octave or a fifth. Well, you can see right here, it's not the soprano, and the soprano's not in here. So neither of these have the soprano on the bass, so these two are okay. Let's look at the upper three for contrary motion. Now, I'm going to remind you about something, and that is inversion of intervals. When you have contrary motion that could potentially be bad, let's take a look at what happens. Okay, so let's suppose you had a parallel motion like this. Okay, So this is parallel thirds. Remember what happens when you invert a voice? Okay, so I'm going to take the alto and I'm going to invert it. When you invert the interval, so I'm going to put it down to C, these two intervals, I'm going to highlight them. These two, they're going to change quality, remember? So a minor third becomes a major sixth, and they're going to add up to, well, oh my gosh, they're going to add up to 9. So it's not the quality that's so important, but it's this adding up to 9, because here's how you can discover whether you have a problem with these contrary motion, with this contrary motion. Okay. You have to look at the two voices and see how far they are moving. If they add up to 9, that means that they are in parallel motion. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about. I know this seems a little bit confusing the way I'm saying it, so I'm going to highlight one and we'll take it as an example. Alright, let's take the first one, the soprano and the alto. They're moving in contrary motion. The soprano, we're just going to look at the number. The soprano is moving down a third. The alto is moving up a second. Notice, that does not add up to 9. So we don't have to worry about that one because they are starting and ending on different intervals. In other words, they cannot form a parallel anything. They cannot go from an octave to an octave or a fifth to a fifth. And you can just look at it and see it's going from a sixth to a third. But the easy way to spot this, if you're not able to see the intervals clearly, the easy way to spot this is to look at how far apart the notes are, add them up, those intervals, and see if it equals 9. If it equals 9, you have to go farther. Alright, let's look at the soprano and the tenor. The tenor is leaping up a fourth. Okay, and I honestly don't know what these are yet. Okay, so the soprano, again, is leaping down a third. And the tenor, a fourth. Well, that's 7. So again, we know that they're going to start and end on different intervals. And if you look at it, the tenor to the soprano is a third, and it ends on a fifth. So that's not a problem. It's not a parallel. Last one. Okay, so far we've gotten pretty lucky. The soprano and the bass. Well, the bass is moving the same distance as the tenor. So I suspect we're not going to have to worry about this one either because it's going to be the same situation. The soprano is leaping down a third, the bass is stepping up a fourth, and again, whoops, it's not 5, it's 7. So it's not adding up to 9. So we don't have to worry about these two either. But if I had to tell you, again, it's a third in the beginning, G to B, and it's a fifth in the end, C to G, from the bass up to the soprano. Okay, we only have one thing left to check. Okay, and that is, oh, dang it, sorry. And that is the bass and the tenor. So let's take a look at the bass and the tenor. Well, you can see both of them are moving up a fourth. And we know it's parallel. Also, here's the problem. This interval here is a P8. So how would I mark this in the music? I wouldn't use a highlighter anymore. If you do this in your writing, or if I see it in the music, I put a line like this, and I write P8. So if you see that in your mark, when we start doing 4-part writing, this is bad, because you don't want to have a parallel octave like that. Now, when I play this, you may not be able to hear this as being bad right now, but if this was say, written by Mozart or Bach, or this would be somewhat considered unacceptable. So let me play it for you, see if you hear anything wrong with this. So the problem is this, of course, that's the parallel octave. As a pianist, I can look at that and it feels wrong, to be honest. And if I see that and I'm playing a piece, well, first of all, it's rare to see something written in this style and see writing like that. But it's almost like having a grammatical error when you're writing an essay. It sticks out as something that is less than effective. So we're going to try to be getting those things out of our writing. I hope this helps you to analyze this style of writing and to recognize when you have a situation where you have a parallel. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.